old, gentle, kind, and a prayerful priest who is always interested in the welfare of his parishioners. But sad to say, all his parishioners, most of them are sick, some of them dying, and some already dead. So a priest who is actually suffering from the sufferings of the poor people of his parish. That's what we saw. Now, leaning on the chair means getting support from a chair. His leaning means bending forward like this. Peep means look through a narrow opening. That is the meaning of, for example, if you look through a keyhole, that is peeping. Peeping is not good manners. Peeping through holes is not good manners. And then next one is whisper. Whisper means speak in a very low voice. Like this. Please come. Like this. Please don't talk. So this way of talking is whispering. It's a very low voice. Speak in a very low voice. Students, when they sit in the class and talk, they whisper each other. Yes. Sparrow chirp. Chirp means the sound produced by a sparrow. Like this. That is the sparrow chirp. That means it's morning. Morning time, sparrows start singing. So their singing is chirping. And now stood upright. He was kneeling. Father Peter Gilligan was kneeling. Now he stood upright. Means he stood up. That is stood upright means straight. He stood straight. So the last class we saw, Peter Gilligan is working day and night. He has no rest. And when he was about to take rest, someone came and asked him to visit a dying person. Then he said that he has no joy, no time, no peace, no rest. Suddenly he understood what he said was not what he should have said. So he knelt down and asked pardon to God. God, the words came out of a very tired body, my tired body, weak body. My mind is willing, my soul is willing, my spirit is willing. Saying so, stanza 4, he knelt and leaning on the chair, is bending towards the chair. He prayed and fell asleep, and the moth hour went from the fields, and stars began to peep. Poor Peter Gilligan, he slept. He knelt down to pray, but unable to pray, because he was so tired. So getting support from the chair, taking the support of the chair, he prayed, but he fell asleep. Then what happens? The moth hour went from the fields. That is late evening, or as I told you the other day, dusk, D-U-S-K, dusk, or twilight disappeared. Then stars began to appear in the sky. Stars began to peep, twinkling. Stars began to peep, means stars began to twinkle in the sky. Then the 5th stanza, they slowly grew into millions. They means the stars. As you can see, as night advances, then you will find that more and more stars appearing in the sky. So they slowly into millions grew. Millions of stars began to appear. and leaves shook in the wind. Night, gentle wind slowly shook the leaves of the wind, and God covered the world with shade. God covered the world with darkness so that His children, that is human beings, who were toiling, working hard during the day, could take rest, enjoy a sound sleep, and whispered to mankind. And at that time, God started speaking to His people, mankind, all the human beings, not this or that race, but entire, all the human beings. Upon the sixth stanza, upon the time of sparrow chirp, throughout the night he slept. In his mind's eye he saw millions of stars peeping in the sky, twinkling in the sky. Then the morning came, sparrows started singing. Sparrow, a small bird. When the moths came once more. So when there is light, moths will come. Light disappears, moths will go. So here light in the morning, the morning sun, the sunlight, the rays of the rising sun attracted the moths. So they came once again. That means announcing that it was morning. The old priest Peter Gilligan stood upright on the floor. Suddenly he opened his eyes. He was sleeping like this. In his mind's eye he saw millions of stars twinkling. Then he heard the sound of the sparrow singing. Opened his eyes. He saw moths were flying here and there. The rays of the rising sun slowly falling and spreading on the surface of this earth. Suddenly he got up and stood upright. You remember what was the last point? He knelt down and prayed, asked God forgiveness for his saying that I have no rest, I have no peace, I have no joy. Suddenly he changed his mind. That's a different thing. And he knelt down to pray. What happened is that, already we have seen, he slept. He had a sound sleep like any other person. Then morning came, the sparrows started singing, the moths began to appear, saw the rising sun's rays falling on the surface of this earth, and then immediately he opened his eyes. So in these three stanzas, in simple English, if we say, he knelt down to pray, he slept, the night was a clear night because there were no clouds, the sky was very clear, the night was silent, there was darkness everywhere, so he could sleep very well. In his mind's eye he saw millions of stars shining. Early morning he heard the chirping of the sparrows. When he opened his eyes he saw the moths also in the field. In the last time he saw the moths disappear. Moth hour went from the fields. Now the moth hour came back in the fields because it is morning. Then immediately he stood upright. So he slept, he got up. Two things happened. And the stars were shining. He slept. Because he was tired, he slept. Night, it was shining of stars. You could see the shining of stars. Stars shining everywhere. Everywhere you could find darkness. And he slept very well. Sound sleep. When he heard the sparrows singing in the morning, he opened his eyes. He saw the moths in the field again fluttering, flying and fluttering, and he stood up. That is it. So he slept and then he suddenly, you can say, he got up from his sleep. Just a deep sleep. Understand? So you can listen. Stanza 4. He knelt down and prayed. Father Peter Gilligan knelt down and prayed. As he was old and tired, he fell asleep. It was getting dark. The moths disappeared from the fields. Stars began to appear in the sky. Stanza 5. Millions of stars appeared in the sky. Gentle winds shook the leaves of the sleeping trees. God covered the world with darkness so that people could sleep. In their sleep, God whispered to his people. Stanza 6. In the morning, the sparrows began to chirp. The moths once again appeared. It was already morning. The old priest got up and stood upright on the floor. I think that is clear, isn't it? Now, as I told you, he knelt and leaning on the chair, he prayed and fell asleep. And the moth went from the fields and stars began to peep. They slowly into millions grew, leaves shook in the wind, and God covered the world with shade and whispered to mankind. Upon the time of sparrow chirp, when the moths came once more, the old priest Peter Gilligan stood upright on the floor. So you should sing like this. Or you recite this stanza by stanza like this. He knelt and leaning on the chair. See, there is a rhythm. He knelt and leaning on the chair. He prayed and fell asleep. And the mother went from the fields and stars began to peep. Understand? They slowly into millions grew and leaves shook in the wind. God covered the world with shade and whispered to mankind. Upon the time of sparrow chirp, when the moths came once more, the old priest Peter Gilligan stood upright on the floor. Is that it? Good. Try this way. Bye.